Big thing for tomorrow, remember your civil disobedience quiz you have. Handwritten notes and all that kind of stuff you can absolutely bring in. I'll collect your notes with the quiz, and then you'll end up getting both back. You did pick up when you came in the letter from Birmingham Jail. This one, we're going to do a quiz for this one on Tuesday of next week. So the way that you're going to get 3 of them. So you have an A, a B, and a C. For all 3, quizzes will be kind of similar in structure, and for all 3, you can bring notes and stuff with you. I do think you'll probably find a letter from Birmingham Jail to be a little bit easier to read, comprehend, understand. A lot of factors. Number one, you're familiar with Martin Luther King Jr., certainly familiar with civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. The overall language, style, things like that, you'll probably find to be a little bit more agreeable and shorter. It's 12 pages as opposed to 16. So I think all those things will be working in your favor. We'll certainly talk about background of Birmingham Jail and all those things. If we don't get into it on Friday, we'll certainly cover that stuff on Monday. By no means am I going to start reading a letter from Birmingham Jail now. I would expect that you're finishing up civil disobedience, but I just like for you to have it, plenty of time in advance before we would do that. That could be on Tuesday. Letter from Birmingham Jail. It's a letter from Birmingham Jail. Martin Luther King Jr. is writing it. Take note, the dear line is to my fellow clergyman. He is writing to Birmingham priests, Protestant ministers, and also rabbis. There's a Birmingham campaign, which we'll get into, which is to desegregate the business districts of Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham has traditionally been, and in some cases still is, one of the more racist cities that is dealing with problematic issues and whatnot with race. So in the 1950s and 60s, absolutely no different. King and a lot of his supporters are doing peaceful protests, right to assembly, sit-ins, and all that kind of stuff. They are told they are not allowed to. So if they do this protest, they will be arrested. So King has a pretty good sense that he's going to get arrested. While he is in jail, the clergy of Birmingham published in the newspaper a letter commending the behavior of the police force. And so it is to that that King takes a strong exception. So he is in solitary confinement, but he's able to kind of get scraps of newspaper and know what's going on, puts together the letter, his lawyers take it, and then kind of gets it into published form. So that's kind of a little bit of the story behind it. We'll talk more about it on Friday and Monday. Tomorrow, after your quiz, I'll have the independent reading books out, so they're still up there. But I'll have sets that you can choose from so that you can sign those things out. So your book sign-out sheets will be out for you while you're taking the quiz, and then also while you're taking the quiz, I'll pass back to you your the Capture the Ride WAs as well. I'm sorry? Those things, those books. It's like, you just missed out on everything. That one field trip just messed you up. You're going to choose one of those 6 books primarily through the month of November. Okay. So yeah, I can talk to you about it in class if need be. Any questions besides like Allie? What are you talking about? Quiz tomorrow is 25 points. I think I mentioned that. Yeah. Your one for a letter from Birmingham Jail. This is going to be harder, but that one is 30 points. And then we'll have one more similar setup, yeah. And then we'll have one more after that for your other packet, which is going to be 20 points. So they're all in that 20 to 30 range. And all quiz grades.
Is there anything specific we like looking for in this packet? Like trying to figure out
The mean answer is, of course, everything. And without going, well, question number 1 is going to be about this or that. Certainly, you can tell that his main frustration is going to be dealing with government. So I would try to be aware of what are his main criticisms, what are things that he wants people to do, or what would be things that he's upset that people don't do, or that the government doesn't do. People take notes in a whole bunch of different ways. The things that I would probably try to focus on is, I'm not saying that you would have 1 page of notes for every page, okay? But I would kind of look at it at a page by page, or even paragraph by paragraph. What are the main ideas that he's trying to get forth in each paragraph? What would be like his main examples of support, reason, rationale? So being aware of those things, I think, would be the best way to go about it. Hopefully Emma survives. We'll find out.
this thing that you have. And if Lindsay gets a 93.5%, she'll let you know.
Bro, I hope I
125 points. You could get a 23 out of 25, that'd be a 92%. Or 24 out of 25, that'd be a 96%. Guess we could do a 22.
that's still.
You're not gonna get a 21.7 each or anything. Just we're not going that far. This packet that you've got, these are the free response questions from the 2015 AP exam. So from just a few years ago. All three questions are in here. So there is the synthesis question, which we have never talked about, and we will do so today. If you take a look at the last page, you see that there is the rhetorical analysis of question number 2, and then on the very back is the DRQ, which is question number 3. How long do you get to write all 3 essays? 120 minutes, not an hour and 20 minutes, which equals 2 hours. So it breaks down to roughly 40 minutes per essay. However, in some ways you have 2 hours and 15 minutes. You have multiple choice tests for an hour. You get like a little 10-minute potty break, stretch, and all that kind of stuff. Then they're going to pass out to you your essay booklet like this. You have 15 minutes to read through the essay booklet. You can mark it up with your pen, do whatever you want prior to that 2-hour clock beginning. So you cannot start writing your essays, but you do have 15 minutes to kind of plan, look over them, see what you want to do. Then the 2-hour clock begins. So the hope is when they go, you may now begin, you open up your writing booklet and you begin. It's a fairly new thing. It's within like the last 10 years that they started doing that, and the reason is because of this synthesis question. The synthesis question is the newest form of question. There used to be 1 rhetorical analysis and 2 argument questions that did not have sources. That was, here's your questions, you have 2 hours to go. Because the synthesis question is accompanied by sources, and you can see down at the bottom of the page that you have 6, they give you 15 minutes with the idea that that gives you time to digest those sources. So if Justin does not get to look at question 2 or 3, it's not that he is falling behind. My guess is, though, by the time you take the AP exam, you'll probably be able to look at all the sources, kind of come up with what you want to do in like 12 minutes, and then in those last 3 to 4 minutes, you can kind of take a look at question number 2, question number 3. You answer the questions in whatever order you want to. Most go 1, 2, 3, I would think. But if you're like, nope, not answering this question for a little while, you could do the rhetorical analysis first, and then do the argument, and then do the synthesis, or whatever. Order is completely up to you. All 3 questions are worth the same amount. So it's not that the synthesis, just because it has these sources and all that stuff, is worth more points than rhetorical analysis or DRQ. Who's an A-push or Euro or had world history last year? Apparently that's where we put everyone in the back row. Oh, I didn't see you. You can go sit back.
It wasn't an effective hand raise.
Has to be
What do the sources remind you of? So far from Euro, A-push, or world history? DBQ. Everyone's 3 favorite letters. For those of you not in DBQ land, it's okay, Allie.
When you said DRQ, I just thought
Oh, I know.
typo, and
Nope.
I was gonna have to do another DBQ, and I was like,
A DBQ is a document-based question. And so a couple things about it, and I know, like, Justin's going, I don't care because I don't take a class for A-push or whatnot. That's perfectly okay. A couple things for folks to understand, though, who have dealt with DBQs before or currently are dealing with them. On the history exams, the DBQ is worth more than the free response and trusted response questions. That's not the case here. So it's the same thing as rhetorical analysis. So if Kobe bombs the synthesis and does well on the rhetorical analysis, it's no different than bombing the rhetorical analysis and doing well on the synthesis. But you can do well on both of them and not worry about it. Also, the thing with the DBQ, it's document-based questions where your answer has to be coming from those documents, and you have to demonstrate.
Please pardon the interruption. Will members of the future business leaders of America, as well as literary leads, report to the auditorium for pictures? Thank you.
For a DBQ, You have to demonstrate your understanding of those documents, of the time period, the people involved, and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to do that with the synthesis. For the synthesis, the sources are there to help you come up with a position, develop ideas. It's not that you are developing your answer around the sources. So those that kind of get nervous about it assume that it's going to be exactly the same. I'd say the synthesis and the DBQ are kind of like cousins, but they're certainly not asking you to do the same thing. The setup of all synthesis questions is pretty much the same. It gets broken up into 3 parts, meaning like 3 little paragraphs that you have here. So the first part always kind of provides you a little bit of context as to what are we looking at, what's the subject matter, what's the intended audience with it. The middle part is always the actual prompt, the assignment, the task. This is what you have to do. And then the last part provides you with some rules and procedures and things like that. So when you take your synthesis in May on the AP exam, it'll be broken up this way as well. So the first part telling us many high schools, colleges, and universities have honor codes or honor systems, sets of rules or principles that are intended to cultivate integrity. These rules or principles often take the form of written positions on practices like cheating, stealing, and plagiarizing, as well as the consequences of violating the established codes. So after that opening paragraph, you got a pretty good idea that what's our subject matter? It's going to be dealing with honor codes, honor systems, cheating, but it's doing so in an academic setting. So we're taking a look at, high schools, colleges, universities. We're not getting into relationship cheating and all that kind of fun stuff that we don't want you to write about. Please don't, under any circumstances. Carefully read the following 6 sources. This is the assignment, this is the prompt, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesize information from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed argument that for your own position on whether your school should establish, maintain, revise, or eliminate an honor code or honor system. So what's important information or important tasks that it's asking you to do in that middle part? Go give me like one thing.
They want you to use information from at least 3 of the sources.
Okay. And that does not change. It doesn't matter what synthesis AP exam year you're taking, it's always going to ask you for 3 sources. That's the expectation, that's the minimum. You can absolutely use more. Using more doesn't mean your score is automatically going to go up. But if you use 3, you can get 6, 7, 8, 9. If you use 2, you're not getting above a 4 because you're not going to meet the basic requirements of the prompt. So you have to use at least 3. And we'll talk about what we mean by using them in a little bit. What else in this middle part? So you have to use 3 sources. What do you have to do with those sources? Lizzie? Establish what? Okay, so you are going to create your own position on whether your school should establish, maintain, revise, or eliminate an honor code or honor system. The biggest mistake that people will make, and this could be kind of that DBQ mentality coming in for some of those people, is they'll summarize the sources and go, this is what the sources think people should do, or what schools should do. Your argument is the most important one. The essay is centered around your argument. You're using the sources to kind of help you out. Another important term that gets used, and we've said it many times, but we haven't really stated what it means, is synthesize. What does it mean to synthesize information? And it's kind of like a scientific. Piece it all together. Bring it together. Build. Blend. So it's not a summary of the sources. It's not solely you, but it's bringing all those things together. Think of the sources as ways to kind of validate your pre-existing ideas and notions. All right. So first part's kind of giving you the context to take a look at, academic setting, honor codes. Now what do you have to do? You're creating your own position about your school. So if we were to write this essay, all of you would be writing about North Hills, because you have to develop position about your own school. And then you can decide whether you want to establish, maintain, revise, or eliminate an honor code or system. If there were a different verb that you wanted to use beyond those 4, I don't see why that would be a problem.
We're not doing this, but like for this question, what if I felt like position didn't go with any of those.
We'll get to that in a minute.
As in, like, since it's your own position, do you use, like, my school, like,
Yeah.
do you say, like,
Mhm.
North Hills High School?
You could go either way. I mean, you could say North Hills High School, and there's not going to be a reader. Oh my goodness, I know that place. You're probably going to have a person from like Wyoming, grading your thing. Hate to tell you, we're not the only North Hills school, in the whole United States. So whether you were to write North Hills or my own school, it wouldn't make a difference. There's absolutely no reason why you have to go with this pretend school. You writing about you go to a private all-girl academy in New England. No point with that, because the whole idea is building an argument based on your own experiences and things like that.
So is this essentially the only English part that you're allowed to use first person?
No, because you can do. You would not use first person that I can think of for rhetorical analysis. The DRQ, and I can't recall if anyone did for. Well, yeah, people did for your certainty and doubt question. You could use personal examples. So if you're writing about a personal example, you're going to go I, me, mine. Even though you're going to use personal examples and probably use first-person pronouns, I don't think there's any reason why you would go, I think my school should establish, maintain, revise. You would simply go, North Hills School District or the North Hills High School must revise their honor code system. If you're writing about yourself and your own actions, nothing wrong with first person. But don't do it just out of sheer laziness. That's like using show. That's like using the to be verbs on take-home essays. It's laziness to do that kind of stuff. Don't write it without having a reason to use the first person pronouns. If for an argument question, whether it be DRQ or synthesis, you go, I think that, and then you state your claim, just if you eliminate, I think that, the rest of the sentence will be a complete sentence. Saves you time. And you can use those words for something else a little bit later on. The third part here with the rules are going to look basically the same as well, regardless of prompt that you do. Your argument should be the focus of your essay. Use the sources to develop your argument and explain the reasoning for it. Avoid merely summarizing the sources. Indicate which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotation, paraphrase, or summary. So you don't have to directly quote them. You're just going to use the sources. You may cite the sources as source A, source B, etc., or use the descriptions in parentheses. So if you are using source D, after you use it, you could go source D, or you could write con. It doesn't matter which one you do, you would just want to be consistent with it. Now, some of you are very intuitive, and you're taking a look at letter from Birmingham jail, and you're going, oh, that says source B. Civil disobedience says source A. So you know what will eventually take shape is going to be a synthesis essay using those sources, and Ali is cited. Ultimately, you'll have 6 sources too. Not all packaged, but you'll have 6 sources. Before getting into the specifics, and like Byron, I'd say yours was more specific with this prompt, any questions about at least the setup or the task? Very much like a DRQ. You're developing a position on an issue, you're supporting it with your own evidence, but you're using sources to kind of help you out as well. What's the next thing that you would do? I would not do that. I would be the second thing I would do. I don't know if I can necessarily write my thesis quite yet. In some cases I might be able. This might be one of them.
But right without my position.
I would start to try to develop your own ideas about the position. The reason for that is, I think it lessens the chance of you relying on the sources if you jump into reading them right away. Now, depending upon the topic, that's going to be easier said than done. I think this is one that you can do that, and we'll start talking about that. There have been synthesis essays about whether or not the penny should be eliminated. Some of you have never thought about that. Some of you deeply care about it. There have been synthesis questions about the effects of advertising. Daylight savings time. How will you fix the post office, Justin? What are you going to do to make it better? He might not be able to state his ideas without looking at the sources. So if the topic is one that you can start to think about ideas, I would start to come up with your own viewpoints, your own ideas, your own topics before looking at the sources. So let's do that first. Now, Byron, you were saying, what if I want to do something that isn't really on here. What do you mean?
What if you want to say like, our school should continue to not have an honor code? That's not one of the options.
Don't we have it on
Well, if you would be saying that we,
Well, okay, not an honor code like they talk about in the sources. Like in the sources, it's pretty specific.
well, I'm not. Don't worry about the sources yet. Don't worry about those. First question would be, do we have an honor code? Okay, there's been some question about that, throughout the course of the day. Does North Hills have an honor code? I would say most people have kind of been going, yes. What is the honor code, or what is the policy when it comes to cheating? That's where some folks kind of go, I'm not 100% sure. So in regards to that, if you're going, should maintain not having one, I would simply say eliminate one altogether. If you want to still have one, but you don't think there can be a whole consistent one throughout the school, then you might go with a maintain, or you might kind of go with a revision. What do we have so far as honor code or policy when it comes to cheating and things like that? What are experiences that we have with it, or experiences we don't have with it?
automatic failure, prison, or cheating results in zero on
You said results in a 0
Yeah.
for the assignment? It's pretty consistent within the English classes.
It says if you let someone cheat off of you, you get a 0 too.
Ooh. I'm just assisting.
Oh no, that happened. Someone works here. They complained about it for the next 6 months.
But who was it? Sometimes
What else? We don't need to get the specifics. Have you had, and this isn't code for going, have you cheated this year? Have you had any experiences with an honor code system this year?
not this year, but before.
All of you should be shaking your head yes, or nodding your head
Oh, turn it in.
yes. And
We have to sign that paper for you.
Oh,
you
yeah.
signed for me.
Oh, yeah.
You turned in your Grapes of Wrath essay. You signed off on it. You're going to be doing independent reading journals. You are going to be signing off on it. Any take-home essay, anything that leaves out of here, you sign off on. So you certainly could also be marking then something where, all right, there are kind of like waivers or declaration statements. What are problems or issues that you could see existing with honor code system? Again, we're dealing with us.
Say like if someone cheats on you, you get a 0. Say you're taking a test, you're not paying attention. Someone could cheat, and if they get caught, then technically you're the
So this is in passing your homework to Emma so she can figure out how to do mean value theorems and all that kind of stuff, but you can't help it if her eyes wander. Okay. What if, I think a lot of you probably, maybe it's in Spanish class, someone said they still do this too, but I know in elementary schools, what would people put up with their desks? Do we have them in Spanish too? Yeah, you have like the 3-sided, science things where you have this privacy shield and things like that. So that could be kind of an example that would take place. The whole issue as to how can you necessarily prevent someone from cheating on you certainly could be an issue. Again, academic. What else?
A lot of kids get away with it, they're not respecting it, because the idea of the honor code is supposed to be you're being honorable by following it, but then a lot of kids just I don't care, and we'll do it anyway, so we'll get caught.
Okay, so like a lack of respect
Yeah.
for it. And some would argue that also carries over into
Yes, it is.
teachers as well.
But one of your teachers, students can have a similar response to somebody, and teachers can assume it's cheating even if you didn't. So it's
hard to prove?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there other hand that went up? Oh. Okay. Anything else? What Byron, you're saying, what was the wording of yours? Maintain not having one, or?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't sign off on something that says I will not cheat, or this is what I say that I will do. Like that, it's more of a policy than a code.
The exceptions to that would be probably more on a class by class basis. No one in here has Mrs. Kane for math. I think she did a take-home test where there was kind of like a similar declaration that would happen.
But like,
Your student handbooks are now all digital. Is there an agreement form you have to
Please
sign?
pardon
on
the
that?
interruption.
It used to be last
Will
page.
members of Student
Okay.
Council and the Photography Club report to the auditorium
So at
for
one
pictures?
time that was kind
Members
of
this is
said.
Lucas
Council
when she
and the
said,
Photography Club.
she said
Thank
like go
you.
ahead and work with each other, just because I know you're going to anyway.
Well, yeah, and so there will be some, well, for example, your catching the rye multiple choice test. I wanted you to work together with each other on it. One of the issues that could certainly come up would be, well, what does it really mean to cheat? You know, as to what is the definition of that? You would have to be careful, because if your synthesis turned into a definition of what should or should not constitute cheating, what are you doing in relation to the prompt? You are off task, off prompt, so you're probably not going to maximize above a 4. But my guess would be that most people in this room, if you were to write this prompt, I'm thinking most people are probably going to go revise. But again, that doesn't mean that you cannot choose, eliminate. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So it's Justin. So, let's go. Not really. Questions then at this point? So what we've done with the brainstorming is, for most of us, we figured out what we want our position to be, revise, and you've now kind of come up with what some possible examples would be. If any of these show up in a source, that's not a problem. It's not going, Jake, your idea is not good enough because the source mentioned it. The nice thing is now you have a source that would maybe kind of augment, enhance your argument. Traditionally, you'll have sources that will agree with you. You'll have sources that disagree with you. You can absolutely use both. You can counter-argue sources. You can argue against the logic that one source uses. Because you have 3 sources, an automatic assumption is I must have 3 body paragraphs. Not the case. You could have multiple sources in a paragraph. You could have 0 sources in a paragraph. Okay, parking pass too?
No.
But the hope is you at least have an idea as to what you want your position to be, and you have some ideas as to what you would do with it.
So basically, you could have 2 body paragraphs, have one like all sources, and then
Theoretically, you could, yeah. That probably won't happen, but there's no reason why you have to have equal distribution of sources. You could have a source in your intro and your conclusion. I would just make sure that if you want to make sure that you are using 3 sources in a way that is benefiting your argument. I wouldn't want to use one source as and use this line as an attention grabber, where you're kind of like quoting it out of context. But there's absolutely nothing wrong. Most of us for TWAs write 2 body paragraphs. Nothing wrong with 2 and 1. Nothing wrong with 2 and 2. It's all up to you as to how you want
Should
to
we
utilize
be
it.
trying to incorporate all 6 sources?
I think I wouldn't try to do it purposely.
Because
There
the
might,
history team is like, just do all of them. The
Well,
history
and-
team is like all of them.
and that's where it's important to remember this is a different task.
Yeah.
Because you could, if the sources were not there, you could still answer the question. Should North Hills revise, maintain, establish, eliminate an honor code system? The whole idea is the sources, you're illustrating that you can blend your ideas in with someone else. And it's really not that much different from rhetorical analysis. You incorporate, you blend authors' words with your own. The task is still different, but it's not, the structure is not all that bad. But now, I would not focus on, I have a new source D, I need to fit this in, if that's not going to help your position.
Every synthesis essay has at least one of these. Some type of visual source. This one has two. Source A is a visual source, and then also source E would also be considered a visual source because it's a chart. It's not paragraphs, it's not prose, and that kind of stuff. They are not trying to trick you with any of the sources. All the sources are legitimate. If Allie uses source A, they're not going to go, you used the cartoon, that's a cheapie, you better use 3 more sources. You could use the cartoon, she could use the table, that's source B, and then she could use some other source, and that would be the requirement. Some people, I think, have a phobia of using the cartoons or the photographs. The penny essay, guess what there was a picture of? There was a picture of 2 pennies.
Ooh.
Both sides of each penny, so there were like 4 images. All one source, was not source A, B, C. We'll take a look at it later. So all of the visual sources can be used. We'll do some things next week to try to show you, I don't want to say better ways, but different ways that you could use it. But can anyone see how you might use this cartoon? Now, I would say you can't use this as research has proven, because basically it's the words coming out of his mouth. We don't necessarily know what that research is. You can still definitely use the idea down at the bottom. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't try to pass that off, though, as being legitimate research just because we don't know.
I don't know, it's sort of ironic.
Yeah.
And funny, you could see how that would be useful in showing how the honor code doesn't really work if you're taking that out.
So how are we enforcing the honor code? Who has a driver's license? Look. You wanted to raise that hand so badly. Look, I don't.
I thought I did.
You can drive. You can drive? Really? Like legally?
Allison,
That makes sense.
I can't park, but I can drive.
You say so.
Yeah. About that.
Fire can't get in the car.
I've actually 2 spaces, now they're both.
Is there trust at home with you using the car? Is there trust with Allie using the
Yeah, my
car?
dad left me his car this week. He trusts.
Trust?
Somewhat.
Trust?
Kind of got an accident.
Depends on really that much.
Trust? You're far enough down the list I don't care anymore. Getting younger and younger and younger.
Van was fine.
Anybody have a tracking device on the car that's keeping track of your speed and location
Wait,
at
they
all
can
times?
Wait, I have
What is
Oh, they put one on the car
a.
too.
I have.
They maybe didn't tell you about it.
No.
Yeah, I think there's one on there. I know there's going to be one. There's one on like my kids' Matchbox cars at this point because I don't trust them where they're going to be with it.
there's one.
If-
My parents.
If Justin's car has GPS that's getting tracked at home to see that he's going 42 miles an hour in a 35 speed limit zone on Babcock Boulevard, let alone like Thompson Run where you got all the twists and turns and all that kind of stuff, and he gets called out about it when he returns home, what's his question going to be?
How'd you know?
And he'll probably even twist it a little bit more into a loaded question. Why don't you trust me? At which point, the parental unit at home will go, that's a loaded question, I cannot answer because that's a lot of fallacy. And you'll be prepared for that.
Apparently for good reason.
Allow
What?
them to argue.
What concept does this bring up? Trust, integrity, things of that nature. You could argue that in what type of culture must an honor code flourish? There has to be in a culture of trust. If you don't have trust student to student, if you don't have trust teacher to student, doesn't matter what you have, your honor code system is not going to work. Now, I might not be going, there is a source with a picture of someone standing by a projector and showing you the honor codes to prevent cheating, and then mentioning the quote word for word. But I certainly could go, source A, the cartoon, brings up the issue that an honor code system cannot work unless there is a culture of trust. I have not said spy cam, I haven't used the quote word for word, but I have used the source where they can tell that I understand how it's working. You could parlay that into then personal experience as to whether or not you think you are in a culture where there is trust. If you have privacy shields going up every time you take a quiz, there's probably not a culture of trust. If Grace has to make up a quiz for me, but I'm only going to send her to a class where there is a teacher, who can monitor you while I'm teaching, there probably is not a system or a culture of trust that would be taking place. So to use a source does not mean to quote it word for word. To use a source does not mean you have to mention every single part in it word for word. Because you get to source B, it's a fairly lengthy source. That is typical of the print sources. That is why they give you 15 minutes to look over them, so that you can find the key terms, the main ideas within context. You can't quote something out of context, but you could certainly find specific aspects of it. Source B talks about the source material, source information at the top. That would be the citation that's up here, and you're not getting tested on it. That would also be this information here. Student account of the introduction of an honor code at her high school, a private boarding school in Massachusetts, originally published in the school newsletter. The student is on the student council. So the faculty, the administration, is presenting their honor code system to the student council, and then it has to be kind of adopted and ratified by them. If you were going with that integrity, culture of trust kind of concept, why might this have a better shot at working? Because who's involved in the policy making? The students, which is probably a foreign concept to most public high schools and whatnot. So, again, you might not be quoting something word for word, but the whole idea that there is student involvement, and not using that as a euphemism for cheating, but that there is student involvement in the creation of the code, you might look at that as to, this is a way in which things can kind of be revised or heightened or maintained and things like that. Emma, did you have a question?
Yeah, are the written sources always going to be that ridiculously long?
This is not ridiculously long. There are some that are longer. There are some that will be shorter, but there will be some that will go onto the front page, and then that will also kind of go onto the back. So far as a source count, 6 to 7 is pretty typical. I don't recall ever seeing one that was 5. Maybe there was a year where there were 8. I know there have been years where there were 7. I don't remember for sure if it was 8. If you were to have one where it was 8, you would have shorter sources. Here, you have really 4 articles. So 4 one-page articles. The whole idea is you can read it, you can dissect it, you can glean the information that you need from it. Within 15 minutes, I would say, is a legitimate task for you to do. This is where having the multiple choice section comes in handy, I think, first. Because what you have to do on multiple choice, read a lot of passages carefully within a limited amount of time, and you're still going to be doing that with this one. That's unfortunate. Now, ridiculously long for a source would be civil disobedience. You're not going to have civil disobedience, letter from Birmingham jail, something like that showing up on an AP exam. Maybe an excerpt from it, but you would not be getting anything beyond a